All right, let's get going. Okay. All right, our next item on the agenda is an update on comprehensive rezoning, which normally happens shortly after a general plan is passed in the county. And so we have asked the Department of Planning and Zoning to come down and talk about where they are in creating their comprehensive, if they're going to be doing comprehensive rezoning, I guess we should start with that. And if they are, when are they going to be doing it? So if you all would like to introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Council. I had good morning, but we're kind of beyond that now. So
Yeah,
good
we are way
afternoon,
beyond
yes.
that.
Linda Eisenberg, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. Today with me is Mary Kendall to my left and Jessica Bella to my right, our two department deputy directors. And so apologies for the first slide not showing up. I think the PDF conversion did not like it, so we'll just go ahead and start with that. So today we're here to discuss with you the department's approach to comprehensive rezoning following the adoption of the most recent general plan. But with that, I think it's important that we discuss with you what our work plan is. As you know, zoning is just one of the implementing efforts of a general plan and is by all means not the only way to implement a general plan. So I want to share with you what our work plan is and how it directly impacts and indirectly impacts the general plan you all work so hard on developing. So right now, DPC has five major projects in process across 6 divisions. As you know, we're leading a highly visible master planning effort. We're hosting 2 committees that were required by Hoco by Design. We're updating our planning manual and we're updating zoning regulations. So specifically, what is this list? This slide represents in more detail what the department is working on. Much of this list will help inform future zoning efforts. So you can go to the next slide, Isaiah. Thank you. So first and foremost is the Gateway Master Plan. As you know, we're currently 1 year into this planning effort, working with the consultant team as well as Gateway property owners, stakeholders, and surrounding communities on this effort. We're anticipating taking the preferred options and giving a briefing to the planning board in the coming months. This has been a very heavy undertaking by our lead division, which is the Division of Community Development. We're standing up 2 committees concurrently now, the Apfo Committee and the Housing Affordability Work Group. So I'll start actually with the Housing Affordability Work Group. This work group was called for in Hoco by Design, and it's focused on housing topics outlined in the general plan that will help inform implementation efforts in the Apfo Committee specifically. So we are looking for them to present to us their findings in December to the Adequate Public Facility Ordinance Committee, which is now currently underway. We've had 5 meetings of this committee, getting ready to have our 6th meeting tomorrow night, including our first public hearing, which was held last week, where we had 26 people attend, and so far 117 comments submitted for that public hearing. We're also currently underway with our landscape manual. This is a much needed rewrite of our landscape manual that was adopted last time in 1993, so it's 31 years old. And this provides landscaping regulations and guidance for new residential and commercial developments. And we're working with the consultant on this. And then the last part that we're working on in this current phasing is the Agricultural Zoning Regulations Amendment. This is in response to various property owner and council requests that we've received over the last year for changes pertaining specifically to agriculture and agritourism. So staff is reviewing the county zoning code to update the districts for these various activities to help with these operations. We are well underway on these efforts, so be looking to see more coming your way on that. Some upcoming projects that we're working on, in addition to what is currently underway, we have 6 new projects for the upcoming year. A 3rd task force will be implemented as identified in Hoco by Design, specifically to review and address Newtown zoning. This will need to be completed in order for the rezoning effort to get underway. As you know, this is going to be a big lift for us to go ahead and review all of the final development plans and mapping, as well as the creation of the task force to develop recommendations for the Newtown district that again will help inform zoning and development code standards for this area. We're bringing back our Plan Howard Academy this spring. We needed to revamp it following the general plan update to be in line now with Hoco by Design. We are also going to be working on a Route 1 manual update. We have an RFP being prepared for that currently, and that's to update the design manual in accordance with the newly adopted Route 1 master plan. We're also putting forward an Elkridge Sustainable Community application. So using the successful model we have in other sustainable communities in Howard County, such as Ellicott City, Long Reach, and North Laurel Savage. So we'll be working on developing this. And then finally, two other items is the age-friendly committee's recommendations for Hoco by Design for the universal design updates, as well as an update to the Route 40 manual, which will be happening toward the end of next year. So this is just a brief timeline of the project. So these are the things we have currently in the process this fall. So again, the Ag ZRA, we're hoping to have something to pre-file in early 2025. The Housing Affordability Work Group, which will have recommendations to Apfo in November, December. The Apfo Committee itself. So the first several months have been really background education for the Apfo Committee members, bringing in experts amongst all the different areas that Apfo will address, and then hosting our first public hearing. The Gateway Master Plan, we're reviewing our 3 master plan preferred options, and we're going to take those preferred options to the planning board for their review and feedback. And then finally, we're in the data collection and research and getting public input for the landscape manual, and hope to have a draft late fall, early winter this year. So then again, moving forward for winter of 2025, we'll be working with the Apfo Committee, discussing and drafting recommendations based on all the information that they've heard on the topics presented to them. Again, continuing with that Gateway Master Plan, preferred options, having a public participation process now starting in February and March and ending that comment period in March of next year. Again, same with the landscape manual, hoping to have something to council in spring of next year. And then Plan Howard Academy, looking to put out call for applications in 25 and selecting participants in March of next year. As for our spring timeline, again, finishing up Apfo at this point and bringing it to council for pre-file. Again, Gateway Master Plan hearings at the end of May to do a pre-file with that, working with the council in June of next year. Beginning the RFP for Route 1 manual, and then beginning our classes for Plan Howard Academy, which is typically a 6 to 8 week class period. And then the Newtown Task Force timeline, beginning that in late spring, early summer of next year, as well as our universal design guidelines. Also just wanted to show you what we are working on for implementation transparency, as outlined in Hoco by Design, as we are developing a dashboard of all the implementation efforts for Hoco by Design. This is just an example of what we'll hopefully have up and running by January 1. We have 78 general plan policies with 323 implementing actions across, as you can see, all of the different agencies within Howard County, and the percentage of the implementation effort and the number of actions that they have assigned to them. We have a December 31st deadline for them to input their data into our DPZ database specifically designed for Hoco by Design implementation efforts to help with our tracking and reporting requirements. So this is an example of what a dashboard would be that we're developing for this effort. So it'll show who's done what percentage of what over the last 12 months, and then as well as some other metrics of residential permits issued, non-residential square feet issued, and how many acres have been put into agricultural preservation. And then finally, just some additional things that we've been working on. We've been working with Department of Public Works and Office of Budget and Management to implement a new capital planning process that was recommended in Hoco by Design to make sure that projects that are being put in the CIP are consistent with Hoco by Design, and projects that are substantially changed, budget items, are consistent with the general plan. As you know, they come before the planning board for that consistency requirement annually before the budget is submitted from their divisions. Again, as I said, the general plan implementation database, we've been working with all of the allied agencies and divisions and departments that are part of the implementing strategy for Hoco by Design to input their information and data to this database. We've assisted the Department of Public Works and Office of Transportation for updates on their design manual as part of a complete streets policy. Again, working with Ag Land Preservation Program expansion and supporting the new Office of Agriculture, which was part of Hoco by Design. And then renewing our Sustainable Communities designation for the North Laurel Savage area. So, as you see, comprehensive zoning specifically was not mentioned in this. We have a huge work plan in front of us. I think at this time, that would be something that, we need to get through these items first and see when we would be able to start comprehensive rezoning prior to the end of this council. But as of now, I don't think our work plan would allow for that.
Okay, so let's just get it clear then. You're doing enough other things that you're going to make sure the comp rezoning isn't done before this council. So then we can stop asking the question, if that's your plan. That is your plan.
This is the priority. For
okay. All right. So we don't need to ask about it any longer. We know that you're going to put it off for another year and a half. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My first question is, did you spend $1 million on the consultant that you said you needed for the Apfo committee? And that was why you couldn't do it for a year.
So we didn't spend $1 million on the Apfo committee. What we had asked for is $500,000 for general plan implementation. And that's being put toward 2 RFPs, one for the Route 1 manual and one for gateway implementation efforts.
I may be misremembering, but I specifically recall it was either for Apfo or housing affordability, one of the two, that the reason why we couldn't set that up earlier is because we needed money in the budget. And the budget wasn't going to be passed until such and such a date. And then we wouldn't be able to look for or hire the consultant until that time. And so it was going to take months to hire this consultant for Apfo. I mean, I can go back and find the public conversation, but I just want to, I want to make sure that you did not hire a consultant for Apfo then.
We did not hire.
You did not.
A consultant.
Okay. All right. Then I wanted to ask about why the Newtown Task Force was the last thing that you set up.
I'm sure I'm not quite understanding that question.
So there were all kinds of task force that we put in here in the general plan. And the last one that it looks like is going to be created is the Newtown Task Force.
Sure. Well, first of all, the Housing Affordability Task Force needed to be established prior to the Apfo committee being convened, because that will be informing the Apfo committee. And as you know, the Apfo committee was to be convened within 12 months of the adoption of the general plan and must be completed with their recommendations within 12 months of convening. So therefore, we have these two groups starting first, because that's the timing of what's required in the code.
So we're just going to ignore Newtown zoning until after this council's gone.
Well, we're going to be standing up the task force within the next year.
Which will probably take well over a year to do, I assume. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand how DPZ is operating. All right, okay. Ms. Walsh?
Yeah. I assume you went through these pieces of paper and what they depict with the administration?
Yes.
Okay, who in the administration?
Well, we directly report to Brian Schefter, but we've been working with the administration on these priorities.
Okay, so Brian Schefter and anyone else within the administration?
I can't speak with who he shared it to. I'm assuming he shared it with everyone in the administration, but this is the approved work plan.
Okay, but you, Linda Eisenberg, have only met with Brian Schefter about this?
I've met with others in the administration.
Okay, that's my question. And who are those others?
The county executive, Brian Schefter, Angela. I mean, so everyone's in agreement with what the work plan is.
Okay, so the county executive is in agreement with the, at least now we have a list of what you say you're going to do in the next 2 years. So I question that strategy, but so the county executive is okay. This is a direct result of the county executive deciding not to advance comprehensive rezoning until after the term of this council.
This work plan is my understanding of the agreed upon work plan for DPZ.
Agreed between whom?
With the administration.
Okay. So do you have the right to pick a plan that the administration does not agree with?
I'm not sure I understand your question, agreed to pick a plan. I mean, I work for the administration, so
Okay.
I take my lead from them.
Okay, and I would agree with that. I mean, there would be better options for me if that were not the case, but I agree with that. You keep saying until there's a new council, but it's not like on the day one after a new council is sworn in, the Department of Planning and Zoning is going to roll in with a comprehensive rezoning plan, right?
Well, no one said new council. I think what we said is that there's going to be a blackout period at some point in time. This is the work plan. Will it take us to that blackout period when you cannot go forward on concrete
Oh
zoning?
dear. Oh my. We've reverse engineered from June, you're saying. This is, I mean, I don't, not even talking to the deputies, because it's not, I don't think. I think it's you, Linda Eisenberg. I think it's our executive and whoever is doing this. You go to the planning board meetings, right?
Obviously, yes.
And you see the problem they have in implementing petitions that say, does this conform to the general plan? When nothing about what has been in place for the last 10 or 13 years has changed except for this illusory general plan, right? You've sat through those conversations.
Well, again, I guess I would question, what are you asking for specifically? I mean, when we do CRAs, we do look for conformance with the general plan. And so would be not contrary to when those are being put forward. I mean, that is the measure for all things that we're working on.
But there's not specific guidance in the general plan, is there?
As far as
What a given site is supposed to be doing or whether or not it should be this or that.
that's not the purpose of the general plan, though.
Right, that's the purpose of zoning, isn't it?
That's one component.
So without the zoning component, the planning board has only one piece of a puzzle that it is required to interpret and enforce as these petitions are being made to it.
I think that's making the assumption that the zoning would be carte blanche changed under a comprehensive rezoning. I mean, the purpose of a comprehensive rezoning is to review the zoning and make updated changes to be in conformance with the plan. But not everything is out of date when a new plan is adopted.
Okay, let's talk about what is out of date, which is the activity centers, right? I mean, I'm not even going after D3, who charged us down a completely unreasonable schedule to get this done so that you could reverse engineer the AFO committee, the housing committee, whatever other committees you wanted to put in place to stall actual effective work.
We can talk the timeline if you want. I think we probably should, because I was trying to get us to a point where we could do it.
And we did. We did,
No.
even when the administration filed it a month early.
Eventually. But the original proposal, I said, I am concerned about the delay because I am concerned that this will affect the the entire process, and that we won't be able to get to comprehensive zoning. And
Would you
that's-
have done that if the Department of Planning and Zoning had said, we're going to enact a blackout period until June of your last year?
Well, no,
Because
I
we
knew
don't
about
want
the
you to decide
blackout
anything.
period, because that exists in code, and that's one of the things I mentioned to this body when I mentioned my concerns. Now, if they had said, hey, doesn't matter how fast you do it, we're never going to get there, then I would have changed my plan. I would have tried just to go less slow. But
There's only the 1 year. That's it. That's the only thing that exists.
And that was an amendment
no,
to change it to
no,
1 year. It
we're
was 6 months in
conflating
the original
things.
proposal.
So I've said, what I'm mentioning, the blackout period is in the code that we aren't to be making zoning changes. That's the period I'm referring to. So there's that piece. And that's what I'm saying. That's when I looked at the calendar and I said, these are my concerns. I was incorporating that. I was walking back from that time to the beginning of our first term. And
I mean, you know, our meetings are videotaped, right? Like they're videotaped.
Yes, they
You know,
are.
your testimony to us is videotaped. Like
Yes,
I do
they
not, as
are.
my personal hobby, want to go back and find all of the, what I now call lies. Like when did this blackout period strategy come into place? Was it before or after we voted on a master plan, like in October or November, or whenever we did it? Like what of these things on here are more important to comprehensive rezoning in order to affect whatever complete or partial rezoning of this county that general plan mandates? Question mark? I said which, they're all more important than a comprehensive rezoning to put into place the general plan?
I mean, all of comprehensive rezoning under the 323 measures that we have for implementing actions, comprehensive rezoning is only one of those. So we are working on a lot of the 323.
Bravo. Which of those 323 is more important than the comprehensive rezoning? You think an ag ZRA is? Which of these council members asked you to do an ag ZRA? To the 2 out of 3? 2 out of 5? Oh, well, that's fantastic.
We had probably 15 different people from the ag community giving us ideas and prioritizing different uses like campgrounds and RV stays and things that our code doesn't allow. Every county that borders us has more agritourism opportunities than we do. So yeah, we asked the administration go down this path 3-4 years ago.
And that's why agrotourism featured so prominently in the general plan? No, it did not. Activity centers did. And we have no guidance on Route 1, on Route 40. We've seen the ZRAs that have come across our docket already. And guess who goes back and watches the planning board hearings? Me. And I hear those 5 members say, I don't know what to do with this. Let's throw it out to the council. And I see you sitting there and not saying anything. This is a deficit. This is a void in planning and zoning, capital P and Z, that you are the head of. And whether you answer or challenge or do whatever in these conversations you have with the executive, if you really were just passing along some direction, then I would have thought you would have implored them to show up and explain the reason why. But I mean, I don't even want to waste any more time on this. It is beyond offensive to me that you can't do your fundamental job. And why, I don't know. I don't actually care. I don't care about these things. I care about the general plan that this council enacted and the priorities that should issue from that. And unless you can draw a direct line from this and show me a prioritized chart that shows that that's the result, I don't buy it. Instead, this looks like what you said is a stall and filling in a lot of things you have to do between now and June when the 5 of us can't vote on something. But what that really means is you're not going to do comprehensive rezoning until probably 2 years into the next council's term, which means there's no actual planning and zoning other than the de facto that we had for the 10 years before this effort, which is a joke, which is do whatever you want. So you will preside over a Department of Planning and Zoning that continues the legacy of do whatever you want. And you know what it never is provide green space.
Point of order.
It is never provide affordable housing.
Point of
It is
order.
never actually planned for and zone things in places where they make sense.
Point of order.
3.5 more years of that.
I think Ms. Walsh is making a good point. So it is
But I
very,
need you to rule on a point of order per Robert's
Yeah,
rules.
yeah.
is
If there's a point
very,
of order, Madam
very
Chair, it's
frustrating.
important. It's important to. I believe it's important for all 5 of us to be able to, at the very least, have a point of order. Not to necessarily interrupt anyone, but to make sure that all 5 of us can get in what we need to say, given Robert's rule of order.
all right. Well, not granted. Okay.
I mean, I said, well,
That's
I'm done.
done.
We have 3.5 years of nothing before us.
All right. Yes, Mr. Youngman.
I don't disagree that we should be doing comp zoning. So I'm in agreement on that.
Yep.
But I don't understand why all of this is directed to the agency and not to where the decisions are being made. And look, it's clear that the administration does not want to do comp zoning. We can debate that with them one way or the other. I haven't heard their reasons for not wanting to do it or not do it. They're not here, but I mean, the agency's doing what the agency's being told to do. So I just want to make sure that we don't get too off track and acting like these guys just got elected.
Point
You know,
taken.
heads of zoning policy and
It is the
strategy.
administration and not the people who are sitting in front of us right now. That is correct. They're the ones who set the
And I know that,
targets.
that
yeah.
unfortunately, they're the closest thing we have to the administration
They
sitting
are.
in front of us, just like Carl was this morning, and I
Yes.
understand that. But there needs to be some acknowledgement that these decisions are being made at a higher level.
Yes, by the
And-
county executive.
And that those folks aren't here to explain them.
Yes, agreed. Sorry, guys.
I am not sorry. I am not sorry, just so that's clear.
Okay, well,
You presented these slides, you made this argument as though that's defensible. You didn't say my boss made me do this.
well, that's not, you know as well as I do, that that's not something that anybody's
I
going to
just-
say.
I mean, then don't
Unless
show
you
up.
would like to walk out of here and get fired.
Then
I
don't show
mean,
up like you haven't for the last 3 or 4 months.
Well, that also
Again,
is really not
this is-
acceptable. Yeah, so I think that we should be pleased that Director Eisenberg is here with her 2 deputies, and I do think that it's incredibly frustrating to get ZRA after ZRA after ZRA after ZRA in activity centers on Route 1, all over the place. Yes, for storage, for everything but activity centers, right. Well, in spaces where activity centers are supposed to be going, but they're not, because instead we're getting storage. So the housing that everybody is craving, and these groups that you're overseeing to create more housing I'm like watching this and just watching it wash away as the activity centers are being filled with storage, flex warehouse, whatever else. And now we have one major activity activity center outside of Gateway that will be in legislation in front of us this coming month. And there's no zoning regulations to tell them, here's the best way to create this activity center. This is, as you well know, long reach. And I even sat with you guys in private in a meeting. Well, actually, maybe it was you, Mary, and said, wouldn't it be so cool if we could get long reach to be like the activity center model, and we could help as a county to create that activity center model, so that every time somebody wanted to do an activity center after this general plan was passed, here's the model. But we don't even have regulations. And I don't know what else to say. It is incredibly frustrating for those of us who are sitting on this side of the table. And I imagine to a certain degree it's frustrating to you all. I don't know. I mean, if this is my job and I do what I'm told to do. And so that's how I proceed. Or wouldn't it be nice if maybe we did have the activity center regulations in place so that when somebody proposes a 500 million square foot activity center, we could say, oh, this is what we need to do here. I don't know. I would think that would be something you all might be concerned about. Maybe not. But I can see you're not going to respond, because if you did, who knows what would happen. Okay. Ms. Rigby.
Thank you. I'm not entirely sure where to begin, because I wanted to begin with Gateway, but instead I'd be really embarrassed to have school children watch this meeting and see how their elected officials behaved. It is, I don't even have words for it. I think it's totally unacceptable. And I really would encourage this body to adopt a code of conduct that we could hold appointed officials to, that we appoint to various boards, like the Board of Appeals, and other boards. And that could also go for elected officials as well. So that way it is clear, there is a clear standard, there is a clear expectation, and we can hold ourselves and each other to those clear standards. And so we can say to someone, if we disagree with their appointment, that, this is point 2, point 3, and this is why. Today has been a lot. I absolutely agree with Ms. Young that we need more criteria when it comes to the activity centers. When I'm thinking about how we're going to implement and do the work that the state has asked us to in regards to TODs, maybe it doesn't need to be, and maybe this isn't another point of it, but maybe all activity centers aren't all activity centers. Like an activity center in a village center might function differently than a TOD activity center, right? And so maybe we wouldn't want the same.
We don't know. That's the issue.
Well, I'm just bringing this point so that we can begin to think about that, because I think we've been talking about activity centers as, you know, we need, all activity centers are the same except for Gateway, which is the major, like the major activity center. And then, but that's an element that I think we should consider. But I do wish that I would see more about TODs on here, because I think that is where we've directed a lot of the growth in our general plan. And I think that that is where the most opportunity would come from. And based on Mr. Bronow's pupil yield analysis, I think that's where the least amount of school children would also come from. So it really could pursue those two elements. If there's anything you want to touch on the TOD.
Yeah, so we'll be addressing that as part of the governor's housing package. That does not need to be done by code changes. It can be done by policy. So we're looking at ways that we can implement policy that fulfills the governor's housing package, and specifically the TOD requirement within 3/4 of a mile, the increased density, that parking and other planning efforts cannot undermine the ability to do those types of developments for housing and affordable housing.
Okay, I mean, because those parking minimums would need to be reevaluated in TODs, and so that latitude exists.
Correct, and that's actually in the law specifically.
Okay. And I am also very disappointed in the lack of a consultant for APFO, mainly because I think it could have elevated the conversation. We're stuck in this simplistic dynamic of years to wait and percentages, but the problems with APFO are so much less about the percentages and the years and so much more about how we equally apply it to all zones and to all units, regardless of the likelihood of children coming out of those places and units.
So my understanding of, prior to kind of some of the decisions that were made before coming on board with the APFO consultant was actually to be for a facilitating role. And so we found that, working with Carl and the administration, myself and others, we didn't need a facilitator to go ahead and stand up this committee. Actually, we've had really great meetings with the committee and brought together some really great experts within our own county government, as well as outside our county government, to inform the APFO committee, everything from the Hospital Association to give information about ED wait times and what not only Howard County Hospital is doing, but also how this is handled in other jurisdictions has been invaluable. We are actually going to have the Maryland Department of Planning and their school planners come to talk about, okay, what does this mean for how other jurisdictions look at state-rated capacities and how those are applied, and how the funding actually comes from the state to local governments with their capacity concerns for new schools or additions, and what those criteria are. So that'll be at our December meeting.
I think touching on those, almost did a SRC. Then I corrected. I caught myself on the acronym.
There's a lot of acronyms.
No, 6 years of habit training. I'm glad to hear that, because I think that those are some of the elements that make it such the way that we do it so problematic in this county.
And also we have, I'm sorry to mention it, but we have Montgomery County coming in as well to talk about how they've done APFO and how they have used instead of meeting certain adequacies, paying into programs to do the expansions that are necessary to meet different requirements within their APFO. So they'll come on the November 20th meeting to the APFO committee, as well as our director of finance is coming to talk about how excise taxes and impact fees would work in Howard County. So we're trying to give them a well-rounded approach to what we do in Howard County. And then when they go to formulate recommendations, if they want to bring anyone else in as they consult on those recommendations, to have them come in and speak to the committee. But we felt the money was better spent for gateway implementation and for the Route 1 corridor plan, which were all under that general heading of general plan implementation, as opposed to spending on a facilitator when we had such a great committee that's running very smoothly, and didn't feel we needed to have the facilitator component for that committee.
Okay, 2-minute warning because we are losing our
Closed captioning.
closed captioning. Thank you.
And then I will say I am glad to see the landscape manual update because this is something that we flagged way back when we did forest conservation, that the landscape manual was very outdated. There are instances where it sort of called for too much or the wrong things. And I also appreciate you connecting with DPW to make sure on the stormwater side that those things are being considered. I do want to highlight that. And I'll end there because I have not eaten today and lunch is waiting.